Welcome, everyone, and let's jump right into this explainer, because today we are tearing down a massive, frankly, exhausting myth. For way too long, society has treated creativity like it's some sort of inherent magical talent bestowed upon a lucky few, right? Like you're either born with a creative gene or you're just not. But the reality, that is simply not true. Creativity is actually a highly essential, completely trainable cognitive skill. And in a rapidly evolving, hyper-connected world, it is absolutely vital for solving complex modern challenges. I mean, think about it. Whether you are actively trying to optimize a highly fragile global supply chain, or maybe you're just hunting for a totally fresh angle on a stagnant marketing campaign, or hey, even if you're just trying to figure out a better, more efficient way to organize your family's completely chaotic weekly schedule, you are actively relying on your brain's capacity to innovate. Creativity isn't magic, it's a muscle. And today, we are going to learn exactly how to build it step by step. So let's quickly run through our roadmap for today. We'll start with the creativity mindset, move into the anatomy of creative thinking, then we'll tackle breaking mental barriers. After that, we dive into practical techniques, designing innovative environments, and finally, mapping out your daily journey. Section 1. The creativity mindset, embracing the foundation. Because before we can even attempt to generate those new world-changing ideas, we have to lay down the correct psychological groundwork. To start, I want to challenge you to fundamentally reframe your baseline beliefs right now. We need to fully embrace a growth mindset, which basically means viewing challenges as opportunities to learn, rather than as inherent limitations. Let's be honest, if you've ever caught yourself saying, well, I'm just not a creative person, or maybe I'm more of a strict analytical thinker, you have to realize that is your fixed mindset talking, and we need to intentionally overwrite that script today. Creative abilities are not locked in at birth. They're actively built through dedication, through hard work, and by intentionally challenging our own unexamined assumptions. When you face a massive roadblock in a project, you have to shift your perspective and view it as an opportunity to stretch your cognitive flexibility. It's just a puzzle to be solved. It is absolutely not a reflection of your inherent limits. Now, there is a core definition we really need to lock in right up front. The source material states it perfectly. Creativity extends far beyond artistic expression. It's the cognitive process of developing original ideas that have value. I love this because this definition completely demystifies that whole tortured artistic genius myth that holds so many of us back from even trying. We aren't just talking about painting a masterpiece or composing a symphony here. We are talking about highly practical, valuable problem solving in your everyday workflow. Figuring out a faster way to process massive amounts of data, that is incredibly creative. Designing a significantly more intuitive workflow for your remote team, that's creative too. At the end of the day, it is entirely about generating real, tangible value. Moving on to Section 2, Anatomy of Creative Thinking, How the Brain Innovates. So our mindset is in the right place. Now let's transition from that abstract psychology into the actual structured neuroscience mechanics of the process. I want to deliberately slow down here for a second because the underlying mechanics of this are just fascinating. Creative thinking fundamentally involves two very distinct, almost opposing mental processes. First up, we have divergent thinking. This is all about generating multiple, wild, unfiltered ideas. It's about aggressively expanding the realm of possibilities. Then, on the flip side, we have convergent thinking. And this is about evaluating, narrowing down, and selecting the absolute best, most practical solutions from that pile. Think about it like this. Divergent thinking is sitting in a room and brainstorming 20 terrible, utterly weird ideas for a new marketing campaign, without filtering yourself at all. Convergent thinking is taking a hard look at that messy, chaotic list, finding the one tiny golden thread of a good idea, and refining it into a highly targeted strategy. But here's the catch. Your brain must intentionally switch between generating those wild possibilities and critically analyzing them. You literally cannot do both effectively at the exact same time. It's like trying to step on the gas and the brake simultaneously. So these two types of thinking actually play out across four very distinct stages of creative problem solving. Step 1 is preparation. This is where you are deeply understanding the problem, gathering all your data, and just doing the hard homework. Step 2 is incubation. This is where you intentionally step back, maybe go for a walk, do the dishes, and just let your subconscious mind percolate on all that raw data you just absorbed. Step 3 is illumination. That's the famous sudden aha moment of insight that feels like it comes out of nowhere, but is actually the result of the first two steps. And finally, step 4, verification. The insight is never the end of the journey. We must rigorously test and refine the solution. The key takeaway here is that we must actively and intentionally engage with every single one of these steps, rather than just sitting around at our desks hoping for random inspiration to magically strike us. And what you quickly realize is that these 4 steps actually form a continuous, endlessly repeatable cycle. You gather your information during the preparation phase, you let it percolate during incubation, you catch that spark of insight, and then you verify it. But, and this is a big but, once you verify an idea in the real world, it almost never works perfectly on the very first try, right? That verification phase usually leads you right back to preparation for the next iteration, because now you're gathering totally new data on exactly why your brilliant idea only partially worked. So it's a systematic, highly reliable engine. It is not a rare lightning strike. You just have to keep. Let's dive into Section 3, Breaking Your Mental Barriers, Troubleshooting the Mind. Because even with the best systems and cycles in the world, we all have deeply ingrained mental roadblocks. Let's start troubleshooting. Our minds are naturally, biologically predisposed to limiting patterns. Take confirmation bias, for example. We subconsciously seek out and remember information that perfectly confirms what we already believe to be true. If you secretly think a new project is doomed from the start, you are only going to notice the flaws and the setbacks. To neutralize that massive cognitive barrier, we have to deliberately practice challenging assumptions by actively, almost aggressively seeking out contradictory information. You have to ask yourself, okay, what would have to be true for the exact opposite of my belief to actually work? Forcing your brain to argue the other side completely short-circuits that confirmation bias and immediately opens up entirely new avenues of thought that were literally invisible to you a minute ago. And here is another absolutely critical roadblock we need to define: functional fixedness. This is a very powerful cognitive bias that essentially limits us to using an object or even a conceptual idea only in the exact way it is traditionally used. Think of something incredibly simple, like a standard paperclip. Is it just a tiny piece of metal for holding paper together? Or if you break functional fixedness, could it act as a makeshift phone stand, a tiny tool to reset your stubbornly frozen Wi-Fi router, or even a zipper pull replacement? Actually, take a second and look around your desk right now. What processes or tools in your life are suffering from functional fixedness? I really challenge you to evaluate your own rigid thinking today and start imagining completely alternative uses for the deeply familiar concepts and tools you rely on every single day. But honestly, perhaps the single biggest obstacle to creativity isn't a clever cognitive bias at all. It's just the profound, paralyzing fear of failure and judgment. We are absolutely terrified of looking foolish in front of our peers. But listen to this carefully. True innovation explicitly requires experimentation, and experimentation, by its very definition, inevitably involves failing along the way. Let's be real, if you aren't failing occasionally, you aren't actually innovating. You are just safely repeating what is already proven to work. So the crucial mindset shift here is that we must completely reframe failure. It's not a disaster, it is immensely valuable feedback. It's just necessary, totally neutral data for our creative process. Every single failure just tells you one more specific way that doesn't work, which pushes you closer to the way that does. Section 4, Practical Innovation Techniques, your toolkit. All right, with those heavy mental barriers finally cleared away, it is time to open up your Practical Innovation Toolkit and look at some highly actionable frameworks. Broadly speaking, there are 4 distinct, highly practical creativity techniques that you can literally start using today. We have structured brainstorming, design thinking, mind mapping, and lateral thinking. And the secret here is that regular, deliberate practice turns these from feeling like awkward, forced corporate exercises into natural, completely default thinking patterns. Now, you absolutely do not need to master all 4 of these immediately. Please don't try to. In fact, picking just one of these frameworks to focus on this week will drastically improve your problem-solving capabilities. But let's explore a couple of these in a bit more detail right now, just so you can see exactly how they actively bypass the mental roadblocks we just talked about. So let's break down these specific, rigid rules of structured brainstorming. Now, I know the phrase structured brainstorming sounds like a total oxymoron, but structure actually breeds immense creativity. Setting a tight constraint, like literally forcing yourself to write down 50 unique ideas in exactly 10 minutes, forces your brain into overdrive. It bypasses that deeply critical, annoying inner voice that constantly tells you all your ideas are terrible, because you simply don't have the time to listen to it. You just have to produce volume. And using the classic improvisational yes and technique ensures that you build on concepts rather than instantly shooting them down. You accept the premise of your teammate's idea, no matter how ridiculous it sounds, and you add to it. This is pure, unadulterated, divergent thinking in action, and it is incredibly powerful when done right. Next up, we have the design thinking process. And this one is a game changer because it always starts with empathy. You have to deeply understand the end user's actual needs, their daily frustrations, and their specific environment before you even dare to define the problem clearly. As humans, we naturally want to jump straight to the fun part, the solution. But starting with empathy forces us to pause. It's only after deeply defining the real, validated problem that you are allowed to ideate solutions and rapidly build low-stakes prototypes to test. By focusing so intensely on the user from step one, you guarantee that your rapid prototypes are actually solving the right problem, rather than spending months building a brilliant, incredibly clever solution to a problem that absolutely nobody actually has. Moving on to Section 5, Designing Innovative Environments, Space, and Culture. So we've zoomed in on the internal mind. Now let's zoom out. How does the external world impact us? Because your surroundings heavily dictate your creative output. Creating a space for true, sustainable innovation relies on three non-negotiable pillars. You need the physical space, the collaborative dynamics, and an experimentation culture. And here's the reality check. You cannot have sustained long-term innovation if you are missing even one of these pillars. A gorgeous, state-of-the-art physical office will not save a highly toxic team dynamic. And on the flip side, a wonderfully collaborative, friendly team will eventually just burn out and stop trying if the overarching company culture harshly punishes every single failed experiment. These three pillars absolutely must work in total harmony. Let's break that down a bit more. On the purely physical side of things, you ideally want a space filled with diverse visual stimuli, highly flexible working areas so people aren't chained to one desk, and natural elements. Think plenty of plants and actual sunlight. But again, a beautiful, modern, open-plan office is completely useless without the right psychological culture backing it up. And building that culture means intentionally curating a team with highly diverse backgrounds and perspectives. It means rigorously enforcing true psychological safety, where people aren't secretly terrified to speak up in a meeting. And it means building internal systems that actively, visibly reward thoughtful risk-taking, even when, especially when, those risks don't completely pan out. The most highly successful environments perfectly balance the total freedom to explore with a very strong, unshakable foundation of structured safety. Which brings us to our final section, Section 6, Your Daily Creative Journey, Habits, and Systems. We've covered some incredible ground today, so let's equip you with a long-term, highly actionable roadmap. Look, we all love shiny, new digital tools, whether it's the absolute latest generative AI for visual inspiration, incredibly complex project mapping software, or infinite collaborative whiteboards. These are all fantastic resources, but we have to remember their place in the hierarchy. Those tools only ever amplify your baseline thinking. They absolutely do not replace it. If your foundational thinking is flawed or lazy, the newest AI tool will just help you execute those flawed, lazy ideas way faster. The real underlying foundation for sustained innovation, the actual bedrock that supports all those flashy digital tools, is built entirely on your quiet, deeply unglamorous daily habits. So what do those foundation-building habits actually look like in the real world? Well, it might mean doing 10 minutes of morning journaling to clear the mental clutter before the avalanche of emails starts flooding in. It definitely means scheduling dedicated, completely uninterrupted ideation time where your only goal is to just sit and think. No phones, no Slack alerts, no distractions. It heavily involves cross-disciplinary reading. Listen, if you're in corporate finance, you should be reading books about architecture. If you're a graphic designer, you should be reading about evolutionary biology. Cross-pollinate your brain. And it absolutely requires regular exposure to new, slightly uncomfortable experiences. Starting small with these specific micro-practices literally builds and strengthens the physical neural pathways for creative thinking in your brain. Just 10 minutes of dedicated, focused free writing a day makes a scientifically measurable difference over a month. And to keep improving over the long haul, you need a rigorous measurement system. Think of it like training for a marathon. First, you have to honestly assess your current strengths and weaknesses. Second, target highly specific skills for deliberate practice. Maybe for the entirety of this month, you focus entirely on improving your divergent brainstorming speed. Third, diligently track your progress in a notebook or journal. And fourth, learn to actively integrate diverse feedback without instantly getting defensive or discouraged. You have to start treating creativity as a dynamic, trackable capability that improves with deliberate, focused practice, exactly like going to the gym and lifting weights. The more effort and consistency you put into the structured system, the stronger those creative muscles will become. So, as we wrap up this explainer, here is my direct, completely serious challenge to you. What specific, slightly uncomfortable creative technique or daily micro practice will you force yourself to apply to a very real problem today? Seriously, don't let this just be a fun, theoretical exercise that you nod along to and then completely forget by tomorrow morning. Take this powerful toolkit, purposefully break through your own functional fixedness, and start building better, more innovative solutions today. You have the mechanics. Now you just need to put in the reps. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive, and as always, stay curious.